The rain was unforgiving. Cars sped past like the old man didn't exist. Bop bar, then he collapsed. Right there on the sidewalk. No one stopped. Not one person. Br until a black boy barely 14 ran into the storm. Br no cameras, no applause. Just a kid with torn shoes lifting a stranger twice his weight. What the boy didn't know, Br, was that the man shaking in his arms controlled billions. And what he did in that rain would shake two lives forever. Because by the next morning, Br men in black suits would come looking for him. And kindness, in a world like this, Br always comes with a price. The rain didn't ask permission. It came down hard, loud, and unforgiving, like the sky itself had finally lost patience with the world below. Water slammed against pavement, flooded gutters, blurred streetlights into shaking ghosts. People ran. Cars sped up, doors closed fast. No one wanted to be caught in it, no one wanted to stop. On the corner of a half-broken bus stop, under a flickering yellow light that buzzed like it was about to give up too, an old man stood alone. His coat was too thin for weather like this. His hands trembled as he gripped an umbrella that fought uselessly against the wind. Rain soaked through his clothes, darkened the fabric, pressed it flat against a body that had already grown tired of holding itself upright. His face was pale, his eyes were distant. He looked like someone the world had finished with. Our cars passed him without slowing, tires sliced through water, spraying his legs. Headlights flashed across his face and vanished just as fast. No one rolled down a window. No one asked if he was okay. In a city full of people, he might as well have been invisible. Across the street, a boy walked home with his head down. He was black. Maybe 14. Maybe younger. Hard to tell when life had already pressed lines of worry into a face that should have still been soft. His sneakers were worn thin at the soles, soaked through, making that heavy squelching sound with every step. His jacket was 2 sizes too small, the zipper broken, flapping open as rain crept in. A backpack hung from one shoulder, heavy with books and water, pulling him slightly to one side. He was tired. School had drained him. The walk home always felt longer when the weather turned bad. Every instinct told him to keep going, to get home, to get dry, to worry about himself, because no one else ever did. Then he saw the old man, just for a second, just a glance, enough to register the shaking hands. The way the man leaned too hard on the bus stop pole, like it was the only thing keeping him up. The boy slowed without meaning to. His feet dragged. His eyes stayed fixed on that corner. He told himself it wasn't his problem. He told himself adults were supposed to take care of themselves. He told himself the city didn't reward kids like him for being soft. The rain answered him by hitting harder. Thunder rolled overhead, deep and angry, rattling windows and nerves. The old man shifted his weight. His knee bent the wrong way. The umbrella slipped from his hand, and then he went down, not a dramatic fall. No scream, no crash, just a quiet collapse like a chair pulled out from under him by time itself. His knees hit first, then his hands, then his side. The umbrella rolled away, spinning uselessly before landing in the gutter, water rushing over it like it didn't matter. The old man didn't move right away. Cars kept passing. A horn blared somewhere far off, not for him but for traffic. A bus splashed by, sending another wave of water across the sidewalk. No one stopped, no one slowed, no one even looked back. The boy froze. His heart pounded so loud he could feel it in his throat. He looked up and down the street, half expecting someone else to step in. An adult, anyone. But the sidewalk stayed empty. Windows stayed dark. The city kept breathing like nothing had happened. Something twisted in his chest. Before fear could talk him out of it, before logic could remind him of all the times the world had taught him to mind his business, the boy ran. His shoes slipped on wet pavement. Rain slapped his face, stung his eyes, soaked his hair flat against his forehead. He dropped his backpack without thinking, letting it hit the ground with a dull splash, and knelt beside the old man. "Sir?" His voice came out thin, almost lost under the rain. The old man's eyes fluttered open. They were glassy, unfocused. His breath came shallow, fast, like he couldn't quite pull enough air in. His hands were shaking worse now, fingers stiff and blue from the cold. "I'm okay," the man whispered, though everything about him said the opposite. The boy didn't argue. He didn't lecture. He just acted. He slipped one arm under the man's shoulder, the other around his back, and tried to lift. The weight surprised him. The man was heavier than he looked, or maybe the boy was just smaller than he wanted to be. His arms strained, his legs shook. For a second he thought he couldn't do it, but he tightened his grip and tried again. With a grunt and a stumble, he managed to pull the old man upright enough to drag him the few feet back under the bus stop roof. It wasn't much shelter, but it was something. The rain still blew in sideways, but at least it wasn't falling straight down on them. The old man sagged against the bench, chest heaving. The boy shrugged out of his jacket. Cold bit into his skin immediately, but he ignored it. He wrapped the jacket around the man's shoulders, pulling it tight, tucking it in like he'd seen his mother do when money was tight but care was not. Thunder cracked again, so loud it made the boy flinch. The light above them flickered, buzzed, then steadied. They sat there like that. Two figures under a weak shelter, one shivering from age and shock, one shivering from cold and choice. The old man tried to speak again, but the words tangled. The boy gently pressed a hand to his shoulder, steady, quiet, telling him without words to save his strength. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time felt strange in the storm. Cars kept going by. People kept not stopping. The boy's teeth chattered now. His clothes were soaked through. Water dripped from his hair down his neck. But he stayed. He kept his eyes on the old man's face, watching for signs that something was wrong, something worse. Eventually, the man's breathing slowed. His shaking eased, just a little. "You didn't have to," the man said finally, his voice hoarse but clearer. The boy shrugged, small. "Couldn't just leave you." The words hung there, simple and heavy. When a cab finally slowed, its yellow lights cutting through the gray, the boy stood and waved it down with both arms. The driver hesitated, looked at the scene, then unlocked the doors. The boy helped the old man to his feet again, careful this time, steadying him as they moved. The man winced but stayed upright. Inside the cab, the air was warm. The driver glanced back, concern flickering across his face. The old man reached into his coat with shaking hands and pulled out a wallet. He tried to press a bill into the boy's palm. The boy shook his head, closed his fingers, pushed the hand back gently. "No, sir." The old man looked at him then, really looked, not past him, not through him, at him. Rainwater streaked down the boy's face, mixing with dirt and exhaustion. His eyes were steady, serious, older than his years. "What's your name?" the man asked. The boy hesitated. Names had a way of sticking, of being remembered. He wasn't sure he wanted that. "It's okay," he said instead. "You're gonna be all right." The cab door closed. The engine pulled away. The boy stood there for a moment, watching the taillights fade into rain and traffic. Then he turned, picked up his soaked backpack, and walked back into the storm. The rain kept falling. The city kept moving. By the time he reached home, he was drenched, cold, exhausted. His mother scolded him for being late, then softened when she saw him shivering. He didn't tell her what happened. Some things felt too big for words. That night, the storm finally broke. Rain slowed to a whisper. Clouds drifted apart. Streets dried. By morning, sunlight crept back between buildings like nothing had ever gone wrong. The bus stop stood empty. The gutter carried no umbrella. The corner looked ordinary again. But somewhere, an old man lay awake, staring at a ceiling, replaying the moment a boy with nothing had given him everything that mattered. And somewhere else, a boy went to school thinking it was just another day, unaware that the world he'd stepped into that storm to help was already turning back toward him. The rain was gone, but the ripple it left behind had only just begun. Morning came like it always did. Too early, too quiet, too heavy. The boy woke up before the alarm because his body had learned not to trust comfort. The room was still dark, the air cold. His clothes from the night before hung over a chair, still damp, still smelling faintly like rain and metal and the city. For a moment, he just sat on the edge of the bed, feet on the floor, staring at nothing. The storm already felt far away, like something that happened to someone else. He washed his face in the sink, cold water biting his skin, looked at himself in the cracked mirror. Same boy, same tired eyes, same quiet mouth that never seemed to have the right words when they mattered. Whatever happened last night hadn't changed that. Not yet. His mother was already gone. A note sat on the counter, written fast, apologizing for not being there. Another double shift, another promise to bring home dinner if she wasn't too late. The apartment felt hollow without her, too much space filled with too little. He grabbed his backpack and stepped outside. The streets looked normal again. Dry pavement, morning buses hissing at stops, people walking fast with coffee cups and headphones, eyes forward, lives sealed off from each other. The bus stop on the corner looked like any other piece of the city now. No sign of the old man, no sign of the fall, just chipped paint and a bent bench. The boy didn't stop. At school, the hallways buzzed with noise and laughter that never seemed meant for him. Lockers slammed, sneakers squeaked. Teachers stood by classroom doors with clipboards and tight smiles. He slid into his seat near the back, like always. BR math class dragged. The teacher explained a problem, then looked at him and hesitated. "Why don't you try this one?" she said, voice careful, like she was already expecting disappointment. He stood, wrote the answer on the board. "Correct." She nodded, surprised. "Good," she said, then turned back to the class without another word. Good was as far as praise ever went. At lunch, he sat alone at the end of the table. A group of boys laughed nearby, loud and careless. One of them glanced at him and smirked. "You always trying to be some hero," the boy said, not even bothering to lower his voice. "Who's saving you?" The table laughed. The boy kept eating. Kept his eyes down. He'd learned early that silence was safer than defense. Words could get twisted. Silence just sat there. Kindness didn't buy protection here. It didn't raise grades. It didn't stop looks from security guards or hands hovering over store alarms when he walked in. Survival meant blending in, keeping your head down, not giving the world a reason to push harder. After school, he walked home the long way, past stores where owners watched him through glass like he might steal the air if given a chance. Past police cars idling with engines on, officers' eyes flicking toward him, then away. At home, he dropped his bag and lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the old man for a moment, wondered if he was okay. Then he let the thought go. Wondering didn't change much. Across the city, the old man sat in a quiet room filled with things money could buy but warmth could not. Doctors had checked him over that morning. Mild shock, dehydration, nothing life-threatening. They spoke to him with respect, with careful words, with the kind of concern reserved for people whose names carried weight, but none of them had been there in the rain. He dismissed them all and sat alone, wrapped in a blanket that felt nothing like the jacket from the night before. His mind replayed the moment over and over. The sound of rain, the way the boy's hands shook, not from fear, but from cold and effort, the refusal of money, the quiet nod before disappearing back into the storm. D-Bar people bowed to him every day, laughed at his jokes, opened doors before he reached them. None of that had felt as real as that jacket settling on his shoulders. He picked up his phone. By early afternoon, the neighborhood felt different. It started with the sound of engines, low, smooth, not the rattling cars that usually pass through. Heads turned, curtains shifted, black sedans rolled in slow, deliberate, like they belonged somewhere else. They parked along the curb, their clean lines, sharp against the cracked pavement. Doors opened. Men stepped out in tailored suits that didn't belong on that street. Polished shoes touched concrete that had seen too many winters and not enough care. Neighbors watched. Whispers bloomed. They looking for someone? Probably trouble. Someone didn't pay. The boy felt it before he saw it, that prickle at the back of his neck, that sense that the air had shifted. He was halfway up the block when one of the men turned and locked eyes with him. The man didn't rush, didn't shout. He walked over calm and measured like time itself worked for him. "Excuse me," he said, voice smooth. "Are you the one who helped an elderly gentleman last night during the storm?" The boy's heart dropped. Every lesson he'd ever learned slammed into him at once. "Don't talk. Don't draw attention. Don't assume this ends well." His hands tightened around his backpack straps. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. The man studied him for a long second, took in the worn shoes, the thin jacket, the guarded eyes. He asked for you," the man said. "Personally?" The words didn't feel like relief, they felt like weight. The boy swallowed, nodded once. Around them, the neighborhood held its breath. Windows stayed cracked open. People leaned just a little closer to their doors. No one stepped in. No one asked questions. This was not their business. The boy took a step forward, then stopped. He looked back down the street toward his building, toward the plaque. His mother would come home to later, tired and unaware. "Am I in trouble?" he asked, the question barely louder than the wind. The man didn't answer right away, just opened the back door of the sedan. The inside was dark, quiet, leather seats untouched by rain or struggle. "We just need to talk," the man said. The boy hesitated, because kindness in his world always came with a cost. The car moved like it belonged to a different world. Bar, it didn't jerk at potholes. It didn't slow for broken lights. It glided. Smooth. Quiet. The kind of quiet that made the boy feel louder just by breathing. He sat in the back seat with his hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the window, watching the city stretch and change as they drove. That bar, they passed neighborhoods he recognized first. Brick buildings, corner stores, bus stops like the one from the storm. Then those faded away. Streets widened. Trees appeared where trash cans used to be. Sidewalks looked cleaner. Cars looked newer. Everything looked like it had been cared for. He pressed his forehead lightly to the glass. They passed buildings he had only seen on television. Towers that reached up like they were competing with the clouds. Walls of glass that reflected the sky back at itself. Places he'd never imagined walking into without being asked what he was doing there. Bar, no one spoke. The man in the front seat kept his eyes on the road. The driver didn't look back once. The boy wondered if this was how people disappeared. Quietly, politely, without a scene. While the car slowed at a gate, security waved them through without a word. They pulled up to a building so tall it seemed unreal, a tower of glass and marble that swallowed the sky whole. The entrance was wide and clean and guarded by men who didn't need to raise their voices to be obeyed. The boy stepped out and immediately felt smaller. Inside, the air was cool and still. Everything echoed softly, footsteps, breath, the hum of something unseen. The floor shined like a mirror. He saw his reflection and barely recognized it. A skinny black kid in worn clothes standing in a place built for power. They rode an elevator that moved faster than anything he'd ever felt. His stomach dropped. Numbers climbed. No one spoke. When the doors opened, it felt like stepping into silence itself. For the room they entered was large and bright. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing the city laid out below like a model. Furniture sat spaced out, expensive without trying to show off. Everything felt calm, controlled. And in the center of it all, near the window, stood the old man. Burr, no rain, no shaking hands, no weakness. He wore a clean suit. His hair was neatly combed. His posture was straight. His eyes were sharp, alert, watching the boy the same way he'd watched the city from above. This was not the man who had collapsed under a flickering bus stop. This is him, the man in the suit said. The old man turned fully then and walked forward. Slow steps measured. Every move carried weight. The boy felt it in his chest. His shoulders tightened. He stood still, unsure if he should speak or wait. The old man stopped a few feet away. "You didn't know who I was," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. The boy swallowed. "No, sir." The old man held his gaze. Long enough to make the boy shift his weight. Long enough to make the silence feel like a test. Then the man smiled, just slightly. "That's why this matters." He gestured toward a chair, but the boy didn't sit. Something in him refused. He stayed standing, hands at his sides, back straight without meaning to. The old man studied him again, slower this time. Not like someone judging, like someone trying to understand. "I fell in the rain," the man said quietly, "and the world walked past me." The boy said nothing. "I have money," the man continued, "more than I could ever spend. I have buildings, companies, influence. When I raise my hand, people listen. When I speak, rooms change." He paused, but that night, none of that mattered. The room seemed to hold its breath. "You didn't see a title," the man said. "You didn't see a name. You didn't see what I owned." He took a step closer. "You saw a man." The words landed heavy. The boy's chest tightened. He thought about the jacket, about the cold, about how small the choice had felt in the moment. "I'm a billionaire," the man said simply. "I built my life on ambition, on deals." He turned and looked back out the window at the city. "People help me every day. They open doors. They offer favors. They smile and wait for something in return." He faced the boy again. "You helped me because I was human." Silence filled the room. The boy felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not fear, something quieter, something steadier. The old man walked to a desk and picked up a folder. He didn't open it yet. "I asked my people to find you," he said, "not to reward you, to understand you." The boy's heart beat faster. He wondered what they had found, his address, his school, his mother working herself thin. "You come from a world that doesn't expect much from you," the man said, not cruel, just honest. "And yet you gave something without being asked." He opened the folder. "This is a scholarship," he said, placing it on the desk. "For any school you choose, tuition, books, housing, all of it." The boy stared at the folder. It didn't look real, it looked like paper, ordinary paper holding an impossible future. "There's more," the man said. "Mentors, support, a path." The boy felt dizzy. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "But that's not why I brought you here," the man continued. He closed the folder. "I brought you here to say thank you." The words hit harder than the offer. The old man stepped closer and extended his hand. "I built my life believing power defined worth," he said softly. "You reminded me what dignity looks like." The boy hesitated, then took the hand. It was warm, firm, real. In that moment he stood a little straighter, not because of money, not because of promise, but because, for once, the world had looked at him and seen something valuable. And far below, the city kept moving, unaware that a quiet balance had just shifted. The news didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through open windows and half-heard conversations. It moved on phones and through whispers, faster than the truth ever traveled in that neighborhood. By the end of the week, everyone knew something had happened. Not the full story. Just enough to change how they looked at the boy when he walked past. People who had never said his name before said it now, some with pride, some with disbelief, some with regret. "That's him. That's the kid. The one from the storm." The street felt different, not kinder, not suddenly fair, just aware, like it had finally noticed someone it had stepped around for years. His mother found out from a coworker before he could tell her himself. She stood in the kitchen, hand over her mouth, eyes wide with fear and pride mixed together so tightly she couldn't tell them apart. When he finally explained everything, she sat down hard in a chair and cried. Not loud, just steady, the kind of crying that came from holding too much for too long. "I raised you right," she said when she could finally breathe again. Her life didn't turn into a dream overnight. Bills didn't vanish. The apartment didn't grow bigger. The streets didn't suddenly feel safe. But something had shifted. Doors cracked open where there had only been walls before. Teachers looked at him differently, listened longer, expected more, and still that wasn't the biggest change. The biggest change happened somewhere else. High above the city, in rooms where storms never reached. The old man stopped being invisible to himself. He remembered the rain the way other men remembered wars, the cold, the silence, the way the world had looked away without even slowing down. He remembered the weight of the jacket on his shoulders and how it had felt heavier than cloth, how it had felt like proof. He started asking questions no one around him was used to answering. About shelters, about schools, about neighborhoods people drove through but never into. He listened more than he spoke. He visited places without cameras, without press. He sat with people who didn't know his name and didn't care. When his advisors asked why he was doing it, he didn't give speeches. He didn't talk about legacy or image. He talked about a boy who didn't walk away. Money moved, quietly at first, then louder. Shelters expanded. Mentorship programs formed. Schools received funding they had been promised for years but never seen. None of it carried his name in bold letters. None of it came with demands for praise. It came with memory. Months later, a ceremony was planned anyway, big enough to satisfy donors, polite enough to keep executives comfortable. The kind of event that smelled like polished floors and careful words. The boy stood in the front row, not because he asked to, because the old man insisted. He wore a suit that didn't quite feel like his yet. His shoes were new. His posture was the same, straight, calm, grounded. Wealth hadn't reached his eyes, purpose had. When the old man stepped to the podium, the room went still, for he didn't read from notes. "Power doesn't reveal character," he said, his voice carried without effort. "Power tests it." People shifted in their seats. "I spent my life believing success meant being seen," he continued, "believing strength meant never falling." He paused. "I was wrong." The room stayed quiet. "Our storm showed me who I was when no one was watching," he said, "and it showed me who we are when we choose to stop." His eyes found the boy. "I was helped by someone the world had already decided didn't matter," he said, "and that help changed everything." There was applause, loud, polite, long. The boy didn't smile, not because he wasn't grateful, but because he understood something most people in that room did not. The storm had passed long ago, but its lessons stayed, that dignity doesn't come from status, that kindness is loudest when no one is watching, that sometimes the smallest hands lift the heaviest truths, because the world doesn't change through power alone. It changes when someone stops.br and helps.